It is, of course, a little unusual to do this video in this wig and makeup, but we'll just go for it. Today I will be talking about how my music taste influences my fashion sense. And for you to see me dressed like this, you might think I listen to a lot of Aisha Erotica, and I don't really. I'm not the biggest fan, but I'm not a hater. So I just want to go through specific pieces of my music taste that have a direct impact on what I wear, and I haven't really thought out a premise much further than that, so we're just gonna go along with it. First things first is just the overarching theme of my outfits would tend to be 60s and 70s inspired fashion. If you don't believe me, here are a couple of examples of times that I felt really in my element, and what do you know, I was leaning 60s and 70s with my outfit. And I will say that's probably the bulk of the music that I listen to, time period wise. I don't really have any Spotify statistics to back that claim up, but it does feel like a lot of my music is 60s Cambodian music, 60s French pop, American psychedelic rock from the 60s and 70s, you know, glam rock from the 70s, Zam rock from the 70s, and, you know, it just sort of feels like that is a time period, an era, for whatever reason, that I really gravitate towards. I think sort of the newfound chaos of the artistic sort of movements of that time were really influential to everything that came after it, and I'm just sort of drawn to ground zero of a lot of really interesting artistic endeavors, which seem to be the 1960s, 1970s. So I like films from this era, I like music from this era, I like a lot of fashion things from this era, so it just kind of follows, stands to reason that I'm inspired by musicians who were oftentimes fashion mavens in and of themselves and wearing all sorts of really interesting garments. David Bowie is the huge, big, obvious one. That was sort of like an egg crack for me, of just like, wow, you really can do anything with clothes. You can really just express yourself in any way you want to. Now, of course, I don't have like the rosy colored glasses of David Bowie that I used to, but hey, like there's still some really solid music and solid fashion things to be gained from old editorial shoots of Mr. David Jones. Another sort of niche 60s, 70s musical outfit that I do really inspire a lot of my outfits would be 60s and 70s occult rock. This is sort of like a occultist slant on 60s and 70s psychedelic rock, and I do really like the things that people wore in the scene, like Jinx Dawson of Coven. I do really like her outfits and her style. Just that sort of like dark twist on a hippie look is just really fun and cool to me. Sort of taking psychedelic fashion and giving it this sort of like spooky slant is really cool. And I will say a lot of music that I really gravitate to from different eras, like the 20s is a big one for me. The 80s, of course, is another big one. I am really interested in the 2010s as well. I'm just like your OG weird little hipster kid from this time period. I went to high school from 2009 to 2013, so that was like the sweet spot of like disgustingly hipster alternative rock that I was really rocking out to in my day. And I do sort of like, again, just really like these little specific eras of music, and they do sort of coincide with my fashion sense. I'm a firm believer that every fashion aesthetic should have some basis in a music-based subculture sort of vibe. I did a whole series about how my two fake aesthetics that I made up for my own amusement, one of which is bimbocore and weirdcore, which I call bimbazar. I did a whole series about music that I think really corresponds to this aesthetic, and I did the same thing for my aesthetic coquetamine, which is coquette and weirdcore combined. So I do have actions to back up this sort of belief system that fashion and music go hand in hand. For this aesthetic that I'm wearing today, Bimbazar, I have a whole playlist about it entitled Bimbazar, of course. I will link it in the description below so you can sort of get a sonic introduction to this strange little aesthetic I made up for my own amusement. There's a lot of things on it that I think were reflected really well in this particular outfit. You know, there's like a psychotically hyper-feminine sort of slant to all of these artists, and I would say that is actually true of a lot of my music taste as well. I wouldn't say my personality is the most feminine in the world, but I do sort of gravitate to that in music, and I gravitate to that in my fashion as well. For whatever reason, there's no real There's no real rhyme or reason to it, it's just something about the screaming vocals of a woman resonate much stronger with me. I'm not a big believer in gender essentialism, but there's just a sort of pattern that I notice that I tend to gravitate towards female artists in general. Another sort of parallel between my music taste and my fashion sense is probably just that I sort of lean towards music that's a little bit darker, a little bit stranger than normal, and that is just something I also echo in my fashion as well. I'm not always content with something being a simple, crystal clear sort of objective in terms of planning an outfit or making a playlist. I do really like the strange, the dark, a little upsetting, off-putting, weird. It depends on the vibe, of course, and I think that is the largest parallel between my music taste and fashion sense, is just that my music taste is all over the place, I like 20s jazz, I like psychedelic cumbia, I like a good Tom Waits howling sort of song. Flipping through my liked songs on Spotify or YouTube Music, it'll be, you know, harp music from the 1600s, lute music from the 1100s, and then all of a sudden it'll be JPEG Mafia. I'm so sorry, there's really nothing I can do to fix myself in that regard, but it is really musical whiplash. In fact, I have a playlist entitled Musical Whiplash, which is just sort of a simulation of what it's like to flip through my liked songs in some ways, and I will link that below too, because it's a really fun, weird sonic experience that I really love. It's one of my pride and joys. But anyway, back on track is just that I am really all over the place with my music taste, and I'm really all over the place with my fashion too. I sort of think of my closet not as a representative wardrobe of a specific aesthetic, but sort of just like a big costume closet that I can sort of cobble together in different sort of aesthetics depending on my mood, depending on the day. I go for medieval revival sort of looks, I go for bimbocore, weirdcore sort of looks, I go for twee, I go for coquette. I mean, I'm just really all over the place, and I wouldn't have it any other way, and I think that permanent craving for variety echoes throughout different aspects of my life, and I just can't help it. I can't be any other way. I can't, like, pick an aesthetic. I used to be goth. I used to really, truly believe that goth was the way of life for me. I just couldn't see myself dressing any other way. I couldn't see myself wearing any other color besides black. But then I sort of felt that that was very limiting, and I felt really constricted by the label, and I also sort of felt weird that I was supposedly supposed to like The Cure or Bauhaus more than I liked psychedelic cumbia or Nancy Sinatra, and that wasn't the case. Firmly would rather listen to Nancy Sinatra over some dreadful howly song from Bauhaus. I mean, like, I'm so sorry. That's just my personal feelings. And I just said, F it, I'm gonna just do whatever the hell I want. And I haven't looked back. I may at some point do another video about my sort of style progression over the years, because it's sort of really just been all over the place. I haven't really, I've just sort of been constantly changing my style as well as sort of my taste in music, art, movies, and fashion. It's just been a really long, strange journey, and I could totally go into depth about that at a later date, but for now, I just wanted to sprinkle in this little food for thought about parallels between fashion and music taste. And I would love to hear about your fashion sense and your music taste and how they sort of feed off of each other and play off of each other, because I do think it is a really good way to be, to just sort of have your artistic sort of endeavors leak into each other all throughout your life. But maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. Anyway, I would love to hear from you. Would love to hear more your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, and until next time, bye.